All right. Well, welcome to another episode of The Next Best Thing with Andrea Cline-Thomas. We have another fabulous guest here to share her wisdom and expertise and lived experience, Ariane Hunter. Ariane, I always ask people, how do you describe yourself?
Wow, that's a great question to kick things off. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm a dreamer. I always have been, always imagining, visualizing the next best thing, like just really expanding beyond my immediate environment. So I would definitely start there. My sun sign is an Aquarius, so for all the Aquariuses out there, that's an air sign. So I'm very inspired and intrigued by intellectual stimulation, philosophizing, looking at different angles and perspectives to see things and understand things, and always being a perpetual student in this game called life. Always, just looking to learn and to understand, and a tiny adventurous streak, I'd say, which I'm sure
Hmm.
we'll get into a little bit later. But yeah, always willing to try new things and expand beyond, my immediate capabilities, and just saying, hey, let me try this at least once. Most of the time, yeah.
Right, right. No, I get that. I get
Other
that.
times I'm like, no, that's not for me.
Right, right.
So it's just case
It
by
just
case
depends
basis.
on the thing. It just depends on the thing, right?
Right,
When
exactly.
when you
Mhm.
say you're a dreamer, tell me about kind of the dreams you had for yourself. Were you like I was a person who like I mean, I planned until 30 because I was like, I'm gonna do this and then this and then this and then 30. I couldn't think of anything more. And I was like, and live happily ever after.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then I
Yep.
hit 30 and I was like, nothing has actually happened the way I thought it was going to.
Right.
Not like
Right.
one. I mean, I had the career that I had been pursuing, but like nothing was like falling in place outside of that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
tell me about when you're talking about being a dreamer. What does that mean for you? What were your dreams?
Ooh. Um, the immediate thing that comes to mind, I always go back to this memory where I was sitting outside of my house. I was living in Long Island at the time, and I was home from school. I think I was maybe in my sophomore or junior year in college, and I was home for the summer, and I was sitting on the stoop outside my house, and I I was such a geek, I was such a nerd. I was always studying business in high school and college. Like it just I was just so fascinated by commerce. And while other folks may have been like, vacationing and summer break and Cancun party, I was like with my international business book, and I was like nose deep into it. And I remember kind of, looking off into the distance, and there was this huge oak tree in front of my house across the street. And I was looking kind of beyond it, and I was thinking, there's a world outside that I want to see. There's a larger world outside of my immediate world that I want to see. I don't know what it is, but I know it expands beyond right here and now. So I think I've always been sort of, you know, um, just a futurist in my thinking, and wanting to see like what was next for us as a society, for business, for industries, for people, for communities. um, so I wasn't able to kind of name it then as that, but it was just a curiosity that I had about the world. And yes, definitely had aspirations for my career and what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be. I've always pictured myself, as a businesswoman with the suits and the pantsuits and the walking down the hallways of a corporate office like Olivia
Yes.
Pope style. I was like, yes, this is who I'm going to be in the world. And I've always dreamed about traveling. Again, I knew that there was just like such a big world out there, and I wanted to see it all. So yeah, those are the things that I really dreamed about. Culture, community, finding like minds was kind of on my radar. and not, I'll say this, not slipping into the status quo, you know, not, it was, I kind of saw around me people who were, kind of checking their boxes and in the career department and in the motherhood department um, and all things that, the society kind of says, you have to aspire towards. And I definitely had my checklist. But I knew that mine was going to be a little bit of a deviation from, most folks that I've seen around me, family and friends included. I didn't know how, but
Mm-hmm.
I knew that, yeah, this is the straight and narrow is not probably where I'm going to end up. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so those are the ways I kind of dreamed out loud.
Yeah, the status quo though is so pervasive.
Yeah.
So how did you create kind of the initial blueprint for yourself? I know it changed along the way, but how did you create that initial blueprint for yourself, knowing that you were a dreamer, knowing that you wanted to see the world beyond your current moment, and
Yeah.
knowing that the status quo wasn't going to fit?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, it's an interesting question, the blueprint. At the time, it felt like, graduate, get a good job, get a good salary, start to travel, start to, see the world. I was, like I mentioned, living in Long Island at the time. So I didn't want to stay there. A lot of my peers have, kind of settled in there. And, I knew that I had my eyes set on the big city. I was originally from New York City, born in the Bronx, and I wanted to get back there. I wanted to, um, I knew that I wanted to experience new cultures and new perspectives and enrich myself. Um, so I've always kind of had that as sort of a North Star. I don't know if I would call it a blueprint, but just kind of a North Star to move in the ways that felt aligned or good to me at the time. So I'd say like one of my, big leaps were, when I chose to move to New York City, when I, got my first job, corporate job working in New York City. Um, and I was in like my mid 20s, at the time, and I didn't think about, um, yeah, like I said, I didn't think about, getting married and settling. I was in my 20s, there was a lot of like things that I wanted to do and people that I wanted to meet and traveling and things like that. So yeah, it was really important to me at the time to have those experiences, um, and then, settle down, whatever, that kind of meant to me at the time. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's always just kind of been, yeah, follow the good feelings, follow, what feels aligned in that moment, trust it, and have that as a new experience. Yeah.
And tell everybody what industry that you were in.
Yeah, so I got my MBA. I studied information systems management. So what that means was I was responsible for analyzing data and digital campaigns for different online brands. So this was kind of at the height of, online marketing, digital marketing. So I was hired to analyze how digital campaigns were performing online. So ads, different promotional marketing tools that were happening online. I worked with, high-end companies like, Lexus, travel companies, Unilever was one of my clients. So yes, I was in the marketing and advertising industry starting out on the data side. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when
Mm-hmm.
you were talking about following the feelings, and so next, everyone's next usually comes when those good feelings are harder to come by, right?
Yeah.
When did things start not feeling so good? And how did you kind of
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that?
Mm. Yeah. Um, when I got to the fancy title, the New York City dream job, um, going in and out of work every day and doing that for years and years and years, that's when it started to kind of feel misaligned. I felt kind of like I was drifting away, further away from my sense of identity and purpose. Um,
Break that down,
Career,
though. Break that
hmm
down. Drifting from
yeah,
your sense of identity and purpose.
I wasn't doing work that I felt, it's going to sound cheesy, but it wasn't changing the world. It wasn't, at the end of the day, if one of these brands had a high, um, click through rate at the time, I was like, okay, let's do more of that. And it just became very empty. And in my mind, it wasn't what I signed up for. That was the work piece of it. Um, at the time, I also didn't feel like it was safe to be myself authentically. So when in the office, where I spent most of my time, where most of us spend our time when we're working in a traditional job, you spend a lot of time around, colleagues and coworkers and in the workspace. And at the time, I couldn't put words to define what I was feeling, but I know it didn't feel good. I knew that whenever I went into the office, it was sort of a different persona that I had to put on in order to navigate it. Um, I didn't feel that I didn't feel invested in, as someone who was contributing largely to the company, as someone who had aspirations to go beyond, the role that she had at the time. I didn't feel that mentorship or support, encouragement from from my employer, at the time. And yeah, it just, I felt small. I felt you know, kind of just empty. And over time, I thought I'll just, maybe it's the job, maybe it's, I just need to do something different. And I would change roles, change, employers. And it would just end up being the same thing a year later, just that same feeling of just separation from myself and stagnancy within my career. And so that was sort of the big beginning of the inklings that I felt day in and day out. And I'm the type of person that, when I feel something, I'll know it almost intuitively, just like instantly. But I'm also the type of person to be like, no, 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 it's fine. I just have to
Yeah,
change
we
this little
are.
thing.
We
I'm
are.
definitely that person. It's like, yeah, no, this is fine. This is fine. It's like that. I always think of it. I mean, maybe you've seen it, that meme with the dog sitting in an office space and there's like fire all around this dog, and there's a little cloud bubble above him, and he's like, "This is fine." That was me, that was me. Like, we can convince ourselves of anything, but it wasn't fine. It wasn't fine. So enough, months and years of feeling that way, it became really clear to me that something needed to change. Yeah.
Was it in your body? Was it in what was,
Mm.
how did it manifest?
Hmm. Yeah, I started having just like pangs in my belly, especially Sunday evenings going into the work week. I would have pangs in my belly when I would get work emails from managers and from difficult colleagues. I would see that, name pop up in my inbox and just react even before I opened the email, even before I got into the office. And I'm like, ooh, this is not, so I felt it in my body first. And to this day, my body continues to be a source of information for me. Yeah, I feel, whether it's in my chest, a tightness in my chest, or just like a pang in the belly, it's always alerting me to something, So I definitely felt it was in my body, um, and recognizing that something felt off. Yeah.
Wow. No, and I think that's the thing is I was just like
Yeah.
you, where it was happening in my body, and I was just like, so what? I'm not sleeping great, and
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
got the emails too, and I was like, God, really angry, and I'm like, whew.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, the person is doing what they should do, but like they are
Right.
very triggering to me, and I was just like,
Right.
that's just part
Right.
of the stressful environment,
Yes. Yes.
no
It's
big
so
deal.
funny. It's so crazy how we learn to normalize chaotic environments or stress, especially as Black women, especially as women of color, we're so resilient in that way. But sometimes I feel like we can be to a fault, we can kind of just normalize the stress that we're feeling. And yeah, I think it first manifests in the body. And if you don't pay attention to it, it starts to manifest into something different. And for me, years and years of ignoring that feeling. I eventually, we'll get to this, but I eventually left corporate and did my own thing. But what I didn't account for was the trauma, like the real trauma that I had endured years and years and years, and how that sort of was still stored in my body. It didn't have the tools, that I have now to take care of myself in a way that could like move through the emotions that I was feeling even after I left corporate. So how my body reacted to that was I developed fibroids, and I know that this is also a very common thing among Black women, and that was sort of a turning point, in my personal life and in my career, where it's like my body was just like, look at me, pay attention to me. This cannot, you have to heal this, So that was a time in my life where I was like, shit, like I really needed to pay attention to myself and start to heal this. I can't just like leave corporate and leave the toxicity behind and just like, okay, done with that, moving on. It's like, no, you still have processing that needs to happen in order for you to move forward. So that was sort of my wake up call. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's great for us to kind of
Yeah.
go there right now about because I mean, a lot of the
Yeah.
people that I've talked to have completely left their industries. And a number of them, because a
Mm,
lot of them are Black women, most of them are Black women, have become entrepreneurs, right?
mm,
And so I
mhm,
never
mhm.
want this space to just say, quit your job and become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
clearly, if you can find a space to get a consistent check, I say
Right.
go do that, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
it's
Right.
a lot easier, right?
Right. Right.
But because of workplaces and work cultures, that's why so many Black women are pursuing entrepreneurship.
Of course.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I want you to expound a little bit more on that because I mean I'm in that space right now of
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm now more than 6 months out.
Mhm. Mhm.
So my therapist was actually just like, all right, you're finished phase one of like in terms of like the transition out. Like there's that phase one of like you get
Mhm.
out, you kind of are like, yes, I'm out now. And you're trying to navigate what this new space looks like. Okay, you've gotten somewhat stable. So you're
Yeah.
stable. You're
Yeah.
stabilized now. And I think that my
Mm.
next phase is really
Mhm.
addressing, I
Mhm.
really need to address what the past 16
Mm.
years have
Yeah.
really been like. How did you do that?
Yeah, I'm still doing that for what it's worth. It's, I kind of had to make peace with the fact that this might be a lifelong, commitment to healing myself. But for me, I really had to learn how to center my needs, and I'm working with a therapist too, and she's really supporting me in that journey and really understanding, how my body is speaking to me. What are the tools and the systems that I now need to put in place whenever I feel triggered or whenever, things from the past resurface that I think that I've healed or kind of gotten through. Um, I carved out space for myself to rest, I talk about this a lot in my work, and there's, you know, this idea of grind culture and hustle culture that exists and that we live in every single day. And pre-pandemic, I had to, you know, I was part of that culture. You know, even as an entrepreneur, even as self-employed, like it's like you have to hustle, you have to be out there constantly, you have to, you know, constantly working on your business. Um, and living in New York City too, the city that never sleeps, where things are always moving, it's just you really can get swept up in that. Um, very easily. Oh my goodness, it's just like you're. I went into the city, to side note, yesterday for an appointment, and I found myself just like, you know, moving at the pace of the crowd on the sidewalk and just like hustling. And I'm like, why am I pushing myself so much? I'm actually not in a rush, but it's just something that is just in, it's energetically, it's just like in the air, right? But so going back to the rest thing, I really had to I could intellectualize why rest is important, but to actually practice that and incorporate that as part of my lifestyle, my everyday, even during the work week, it took a lot of work. So one of the things that I did is that I gifted myself sort of a mini sabbatical, you know, and I gave myself, you know, a couple of months to just unplug, only say yes to the things that, you know, were lighting me up, you know, that I was inspired by, and really being unapologetic about saying no to the even if they were paid, even if it was, you know, and really being in my truth, and being honest with myself. And that's something that, you know, I'm also practicing is being honest with yourself. You know, how true is it that, you know, you enjoy, you know, this piece of your business or this piece of your work? Like, actually, no, I think I kind of, you know, grown out of that, and just, yeah, and just practicing more of that. And so what does that mean, you know? So this idea of incorporating, you know, rest and incorporating, you know, spaciousness, freedom. It's something that, you know, every year I always give myself a new word, you know, an intention, you know, for the year. And I know a lot of folks practice this as well. And I do it on my birthday, actually, and not in the beginning of the year, but on my birthday, and just choose a word for myself. And you know, I think it was a couple of years ago, my word was spaciousness, you know, and really defining for myself, what does space look like in my life? What does it look like on my calendar? What does it look like, the work that I do? What does it look like, you know, even going to the supermarket, you know, just like really integrating that as part of my you know, my lifestyle and how I show up, you know. And it really allowed me to put guardrails on the things that, you know, like I said, that I say yes to. And when I'm feeling out of alignment with that, it's like an automatic light bulb of, oh, okay, I'm drifting a little bit further away from this. What needs
Got
to
it.
change, right? So yeah, these are some practices that I had to kind of learn how to do, and it all, you know, started with me having to center my needs.
You know what? That was, I needed to hear that. Like, I'm about to,
Yeah.
after we're done, I'm about to send a text and unjoin
Yes.
something that I was a part of,
Do
that
it.
I've been thinking about doing for a long time. And it's not that it's burdensome, but it's just that because I do
Yeah.
need space. Because
Yeah.
I jumped out and I thought that I was going to, like, oh, I was going to do that 3 month, and it didn't end up that way, right?
Yeah.
And it just
Yeah.
really was like, I really jumped back. I had something lined up, but it was like, it was pretty,
Mhm.
it wasn't time consuming
Mhm. Mhm.
for a while.
Yeah.
And then it just like ramped up. But because it wasn't, I like added all these things. And so at the end of last year, I was like super, super busy. And then this year
Mhm.
has been busy, but I do have a contract that's about to end. And I'm
Mhm.
like, okay,
Yeah.
now that this contract is done, and I'm kind of putting feelers out for other things, I was like, I
Sure.
might need to give myself April to just
Mhm.
kind of
Mhm.
just do the basics.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then kind
Yeah.
of, you know, because I am feeling like I just hopped into another
Mhm.
frying pan and I didn't
Yeah.
take a moment. So
Thank you.
you are confirmation
If
for
you needed
me
a
to do
sign,
that. Yeah,
this
I
is
needed a
it.
sign. You were
Mhm.
it. You were
I get
absolutely it.
that. I get that. I think, one of the things, when you were talking, I was thinking about, changing your mind. You're allowed to change your mind. And I think something that I had to learn, a pattern I had to break was like once I commit to something, and it's a great pattern to have is like once you commit to something, you're in see it through. And yes, absolutely to that. But if it's within your power to change your mind and say, actually, on second thought, I made this choice from, a different place. I'm feeling a little differently about it now. Can you give yourself space to just say, actually, I'm going to take this off my plate within reason, with it, where you can. But I think I was this person that used to just like struggle through something. I'm like, why am I doing this? I used to be a part of this women's group that ran for, it was close to 2 years, and then it stopped being helpful. But these were women that were my friends, and that I could talk to, and we connected. We had deep relationships with through this group, and there was a deep sense of guilt that I had when I realized. I was like, "Ooh, I think it's time to move on from how am I going to have this conversation." And I did, and it ended up being fine, but just kind of an example of just like, you change your mind and things stop being helpful, and you take it off your plate, and it creates space for other things that might be more in alignment. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I love that.
Mhm.
So your next is your company where you're really guiding people to their next. You
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
shepherding them really to their next.
Mhm.
So tell me about, what do you see in people, your clients that come to you? Are there common characteristics that you see? And I want to say that you're not just telling people, again, to become an entrepreneur. Sometimes it's an entrepreneurial journey where,
Mhm.
it's all about finding your place where you can thrive, whatever that looks
Absolutely.
like, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I deeply believe in, going from surviving to thriving, so whatever, taking the leap, I talk a lot about that a lot in my work, and whatever that leap looks like for you. And so what often tends to show up in the work that I do with my clients is, are those, women who are, kind of at a career plateau, where they're feeling a little bit of stagnation. They do have entrepreneurial dreams of starting their own thing. Um, Unfortunately, more times than not, I have clients who are trying to escape a toxic workplace. It's just the reality of what's happening right now. There are um, unfortunately just toxic workplaces that are continuing to uphold the status quo systemically, and it's impacting their employees that of marginalized identities the most and the hardest. And so oftentimes, what I hear is that, Ariane, my manager, is making it really hard for me to do my work. They're not supportive of me. They're not asking me, what are my career goals beyond this? I don't feel seen. Um, and it becomes sometimes a violent, workplace where, my clients are actually, like, this person has it out for me. I'm not just imagining this. So there's always these difficult conversations, and I'm very unapologetic about, we got to get you the hell out of there ASAP, and so let's explore all of our options. And let's not, leave anything off the table here. I would never say, quit your job, go start your business. If you have the pieces and the resources in place to do that, absolutely, let's roll up our sleeves and talk. But maybe it means, transitioning to a more healthier workplace where you feel that you will be seen and you will be supported. I do believe that those corporations exist, despite, a lot to the, to the otherwise. But I teach my clients how to, assess for these things during the job search, to really be intentional and thoughtful about what does your next look like for you, and let's look at everything from salary to, are you working from home? Who are your colleagues? What do you get to do every single day? Because I do believe that we get to claim those things for ourselves. A lot of my work since the very beginning has been about dreaming. We started this conversation off, about dreams, and for our ancestors, our you know that didn't get to dream, that didn't get to um, that didn't get to have it. Those dreams were stolen from them, and I think about that often. And now it's like, how can we honor our ancestors in a way where we can reclaim our dreams? We can learn to live, and to dream again. I think we've kind of gotten away from that as well. But for our ancestors who, were enslaved and weren't allowed to dream, how can we dream on their behalf? What would the dreams that they would want for us be? We've heard, I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams, and really stepping into that, because we can. And this is not to, deny that there are real systemic challenges and barriers that make it especially difficult for us to follow through on that. But in the ways that we can show up and live outside of the capitalism, the patriarchy, the racism, if we can subvert that and create our own culture, right? Where our dreams are centered, that's the possibilities I want for us. That's what I dream about now, where we're able to center ourselves, our voices, in a way that feels, authentic and just beautiful for us.
Oh, God, that stirs up so much in me, because one of the indications that I am in a danger zone is when I stop dreaming.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of the things. So, the day I quit was not the day I left. I quit and I had to stay on for a whole month.
Right.
But after that, one of the indicators that I used to kind of assess my well-being and just like check in with myself was like, wow, I am dreaming again, and I'm a dreamer too. And I was like, oh, it's back. Because once I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not dreaming anymore, and I feel like my perspective is just here and now, which is not a natural place for me to be, then I start to get scared.
Yes.
For myself. I start getting, that's like an indicator for me, for sure.
Right.
And it was also a motivation for this podcast, because I've read the books, the business books, and trying to like use those lessons, but they didn't ever address being in a marginalized group in a corporate setting, right? And so, and then it came to a point where I was just like, none of this is true. Like, you can work hard. You can tell your employer what you're worth and have the stats to back it up and bring it to the meetings and address it before the review and do all the things. And it might just not work. Like, these gaps aren't here because of a lack of effort, because of a lack of not knowing how to negotiate these settings. They're here on purpose. And so therefore I deduced that a lot of this stuff is actually not true. So then what new rules am I going to create for myself? And it was like the most freeing thing when I was like, okay, maybe I could do this, and maybe I can do this, and maybe I could do this, within trying to negotiate the space. And then I'm like, I don't actually have to do this anymore. Like that, like it took me 16 years to be like, I don't have to do this anymore. And then I was just like, well, if 2 degrees, if all these awards, if all this experience, if moving up the ladder does not get me anything else, then it's on me. Then I got bigger issues, right? If all of that in the marketplace does not count for anything, but I'm moving as if I have nothing to offer other spaces. So I'm trying to negotiate a space that's clearly misaligned and trying to do my damnedest to do it, and using my wildest imagination. And then I was like, wait a minute, I don't have to do this? And it
That,
never crossed
yeah.
my mind.
Hmm. Oh, I got chills just hearing you say that. It's such an awakening that happens when you give yourself permission, and I love how you put it, to create your own rules, because I think that we've just been sucked into a rule system that was never designed for us, ever. And I related so much to what you're saying about reading all the books. Like, my library like had to have a serious overhaul because I'm like, this is not cutting it, and they're not speaking to me. And I remember so vividly when I was first starting out, and I read this book called Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, the title resonated with me, because I'm like, maybe I'm not being aggressive enough, or maybe I need to speak up, and it's like, it was a handbook for like how to be, a cis straight white guy, and just like, here's how you make your success. And I'm like, but I'm not that. And the book was written by a white woman too. So it's interesting, the dynamic there of just, it's like this group like trying to play by, again, these rules that are not designed for them. So yeah, I think it's, when you get to that point of just like, this is, Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In was a big also turning point for me. And I remember thinking in the moment, I was like, this is not, I can't relate to this,
Yeah. Like,
but
my face
everybody
is
was
on the
like,
ground.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was everybody was just like, lean in this, lean in that. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna lean
Yeah.
out on this
Yeah.
conversation, but yeah. So
And it
yeah, it's
doesn't
so
account for
liberating.
the
Yeah.
environment,
Hmm.
and it doesn't account for the systems
Right.
in place at all. It
No.
makes it one's
No.
personal responsibility to negotiate things that are way beyond us, right?
Right. Right.
And one of the
Yeah.
things that I say is, how do you negotiate spaces that were created without you in mind,
Yep.
right? So it's just
That
like,
part. Yeah.
it's not. So I would always hear assimilation
Yeah.
or be a
Yeah.
man,
Hmm.
and I'm like, I can't do either.
Right. Right.
So then
Right.
what? Failure? Because I don't take too well to that.
Right.
Failure. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to
Mm.
try my damnedest, but I don't take too well
Yeah.
to that.
Can we actually, on that part, expand on that a little bit too?
Yeah.
Because I I feel that a lot of the times we personalize our failures as if I am wrong. I just needed to do better. If only I did this differently. If only not recognizing that we are, like you said, in a system that it's like literally, designed for us not to succeed, or not to advance. But I think the first thing that we do is we turn on ourselves. We blame ourselves. Like, if only it's my fault. When it's, and yes, there is certain, times where you take responsibility for things, and always growing, always improving. But it doesn't include the higher or the larger issue that's happening societally in our work culture, is that despite your best efforts, if you are a person of color, you are marginalized in any way, these are the things that you will bump up against, and this is systemic, and it's much larger than you. So I just wanted to name that, because I think, that's something that also comes up a lot in my conversations with clients. It's like, I'm not trying hard enough. I'm not this, I'm not qualified. And it's like, damn that, okay, well, should we go back to your resume? Should we go back to, so yeah, blaming ourselves is oftentimes, that's not the answer either.
Oh, I
Yeah.
have stewed
Yeah.
there. And so I want to I want to bring up your book, Dreaming on Purpose, a manifesto for Black women on taking the leap and building her business.
Yeah.
When does it come out?
It's coming out later on this fall, so more updates will be announced as we come along. But I am super excited, super proud of this book. It's been written and rewritten several times in the last few years, and it's really just my love letter, to Black women on reclaiming our dreams. It's time for us to really center, what does that mean for us? really put ourselves on, on this path towards thriving in our career, creating examples of leadership, looking into how do we build, wealth? How do we use entrepreneurship as a way to get free? Because this doesn't mean that, again, you quit your job and ride off into the sunset with your business. It may mean that you have this, business on the side for a little while, and that's fine too. But when shit hits the fan and the job market goes like this, and, there's a health crisis and all these things that we can't control, the one thing that you can is your brand, is your business, and you can really be at the helm of that. So this is the thing that I really want to instill in us as we move through our careers, is to be more in control of it, despite what's happening all around us. And I really believe entrepreneurship is the pathway to so many things, including our freedom.
I think so. That's what I'm using it for. That's 100%. And it's creating agency. And so that's why I was just like,
Absolutely.
Wanting to do these interviews to talk about how people have created agency when they have a marginalized identity. What does that even look like? And it's not a light switch. You have to be strategic. Right. You have to plan, but it is possible. So if you're having to grit your teeth and say, all right, I got to do this now, like that motivated me in so many jobs. It's like, I'm working on something though. Yeah. I'm working on something because one day this is not going to, one day I'm jumping ship. I always knew, I didn't know when it was, but I was like, one day I'm jumping ship, but I'm doing little things incrementally along the way, including saving money to then jump. To do. And so that's why I think that I've been able to have like a really great transition, is because it didn't, to everybody from the outside, it looked like I just flipped a switch, but really I knew I was plotting and planning for years.
Yes. I love that. I think that, like what you said about the autonomy, that is such a greatest gift that we can give to ourselves, is to know that we can say peace out, because we have something that is bigger and better, and we are not defined by, our jobs and the toxicity of it, but that we have choices. And I know that there's going to be, Black women listening to this, right now, thinking that same thing that you just said and did in your life. And I think if we can show more examples of like, well, if she did it, I know I can do it, and if nothing else, if you don't take anything else away from this book, Dreaming on Purpose, it's that one piece, is that if she can do it, I can do it, because that's the thing that really drove me, so it's, when we go for our dreams, it's not always about you. It is your journey and it is personal, but it's the impact that you have on other people to show what's possible. And that just like is beyond. It's such a priceless gift.
Amen.
Yeah.
So we'll close out this interview with what I call the ACT UP segment. ACT is they're my initials, Andrea Cline-Thomas, ACT. And so somebody who's hit a sense of where they're not dreaming, right? What do you say to them to kind of get their juices flowing again, that they can do right now?
Follow your curiosities. Follow your curiosities. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't even have to know what your dreams are. That's okay. A little mystery, a little uncertainty is actually okay. But you can activate your curiosities. What are some things that you're interested in learning? Surround yourself with things that inspire you, because that's going to give you information for the things that light you up. It's going to start to expand your imagination, your visualizing of what can be possible, right? So you don't have to have it all figured out, but you can take that one step in, like, what is interesting to me? What are some passions? What are some hobbies? What are some interests that maybe I've gotten away from, because I'm so caught up in the struggle of that. I took Spanish classes pretty much all of the pandemic, like things like, it had nothing to do with my business. It was just for the pure pleasure of it. And I think, again, reconnecting with your pleasures, reconnecting with your joy, follow your curiosities, because it's going to lead you to more clarity in what your dreams are and what's possible.
I love that. Giving people permission to take it easy a little bit. you
Yeah.
know,
Yes. Yes.
to have fun, because joy is, it does give us a roadmap for
Yeah.
sure.
Absolutely. Mhm.
I'm so excited about your book. I
Thank
cannot wait for it to
you.
come out. I will pre-order,
Thank
pre-order, pre-order. I got a lot of people to send it to.
Music to this author's ears. Yes. No, I'm excited for it
Yes.
to be in the world for sure.
Yes, and I know it's such a hard thing to do. So kudos to you,
Thank
um,
you.
of just like being our lighthouse. That's who you are. You, like,
Mm.
you went through your stuff, right? But it just like enriched your ability to be our lighthouse, our safe space to go
Mhm.
to, where you can tell us it's okay.
Yeah.
And also, the way you show up is saying we'll do it together,
Yeah.
which is what I
Yeah.
really love.
Thank you for saying that. And
Right.
I just want to give you your flowers too. We're both doing it. Every time I hear you talk about your dreams and where you're going next, it's just it lights me up and it continues to inspire me. So
Oh,
keep
thank you.
going too. We're in this together.
Absolutely.